This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you are at. We're at 5280, and it's where we hope you will join us in September. Now, in listening to the Mile High Podcast, you never want to miss any tick. You definitely don't want to miss any Mile High tick. So make sure you hit subscribe. You may be listening to this on Spotify or on iTunes, or maybe you're watching on YouTube. And just make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick. And most certainly, do not miss Mile High. All right, don't let the 13 scare you. Okay, there's no reason for that. Just be at Mile High 13. RiseUpToMileHigh.com is where you can get the information on that. I was going to say 411, but I don't know if people know what that means anymore. So I'm aging myself. And speaking of that, I am with someone else who is of this similar generation that does know what 411 is, which is Dr. Steve Tullius, who I am a big fan of. He is one of the people that I really appreciate how much they contribute to chiropractic. You know, there's lots of people that don't put their money where their mouth is, and don't necessarily put energy behind what it is they're doing. And Dr. Steve is one of the people that does, and I really appreciate that about him. He runs pediatric family focused practices. He runs Waitlist Workshops. He's on the Sherman College of Chiropractic Board of Trustees. And then he also assists with the coalition, which we'll be talking about. And I'm sure he actually assists with more things than that. And thank you for joining us today, Dr. Steve Tullius.
Hey, Dr. Danny, thank you so much. You touch on a subject just when you're sharing some of the things about me, like the things that I do in the profession are not it's not by choice, it's by necessity, because we're stewards. By nature of being chiropractors, we were given this sacred trust, and I find it difficult sometimes to when I see leaders in our profession who don't really embrace this concept of being a steward. And I think some of it happens because they sometimes think, like, who am I to steward this thing? Well, like, who are you not to steward this? Those that understand the 33 principles and the devastating impact of vertebral subluxation, we all have a moral responsibility to be stewards of this thing. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in dire straits of this thing being lost to humanity, to the ages, if we don't protect it and promote it. And so what I love about Mile High, right, is that's exactly what you guys have been doing for 13 plus years. You've obviously been doing it much longer. You and Rochelle are some of the finest stewards in the profession. And so I encourage anyone who's listening to this today to think about, what does it mean to be a steward? You're already leading your community, right? As chiropractors, we have to be leaders, or we go down, we fail. Because if we can't lead our own people in our practices, they're not going to follow us, right? And so you're already leading, so why not take the next step and lead at a higher level? Lead your community of chiropractors. So my request, and I guess what I'm really imploring anyone who's listening to us to do, is to get to Mile High, not just for Danny's benefit, because Danny, Doc, you're not benefiting. This isn't for your mental, emotional, financial health. Right? This is because you chose to be a steward.
Say that again.
You chose to be a steward. You don't have any other option than to do this. And And so I encourage anyone who's listening to this, to understand that myself, Dr. Danny, any number of the speakers who are going to be sharing are no different than you. We just at some point decided that we had no other option than to lead at a deeper, more impactful level. So if you resonate with that at some degree, get to Mile High. Mile High is going to be the mecca this year of the movement that is taking our profession back. Right? Danny, you've been leading this charge. You've protected chiropractic in the state of Colorado for years. You've promoted it and protected it through your work with Sherman and through Network and everywhere else. And so now we have an opportunity that's bigger than ever. You mentioned the coalition. I think we should talk a little bit about that, but I know I've talked too much already. So Danny, you take it from here and I'll just follow your lead now.
Well, I appreciate you say the word steward, and I wish more chiropractors saw that. I think once people really connect to a certain set of truths or values, and it could be in many different areas. It's not, people don't have truth values only in chiropractic. Whatever they have truths or values that they really resonate with, then they realize they have to be steward to that. I mean, people are stewards to their family, right? Or whatever it might be. And the stewardship is a very valuable thing that not enough people embrace, and they may just go along and not care for the things that they value. And I knew once I became a chiropractor, I had already heard so much about various political stuff from being in my family through my own parents. And then when I saw stuff at Sherman, you just get thrown into it, or you get pulled into it, be a better way to say it, and then going further, I remember, being involved at Sherman College on the Board of Trustees and just starting to look at things that way my first couple months. And I was looking at donors lists and things like that. And there were people that I'd given a lot of money to for services they had given me that I thought were very valuable. I still appreciate they made a huge impact on me. But then I saw they weren't on the donor list for schools, and they weren't actually involved with organizations or doing things of some kind. They were providing valuable service. There wasn't some aspect of giving back, or being a steward to something in profession. And that irked me. And I think it probably irks you. And that's why I appreciate what you do, and why I select the people that speak at Mile High as people that I know give back in some way and into chiropractic, or feed into it, whether it be a school or an organization like the IFCO or whatever it might be. And I want Mile High to be a movement that it represents that, not just particularly platitudes that people say from a stage, but it encapsulates a certain set of values that people are actually feeding into, which I know you do. So let's dive into some of that. I mentioned the IFCO, the coalition, the Sherman, and such. But first, we go a little bit more into that. What fueled you becoming a chiropractor, and to a level of being a steward for it in different areas? What sparked you giving in that way of yourself?
Yeah, from about the age of 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, because I knew I wanted to help people, and I knew I wanted to make money. And so I said, okay, well, I'll be a doctor, right? Doctors make money and they help people. And so I was pre-med until I encountered chiropractic, had phenomenal experience. I was still pre-med though. I was and constantly getting injured. After one football injury, went to an orthopedic doctor, and he couldn't find anything. He didn't do any orthopedic tests. He didn't touch me. He suggested that we get an MRI. We did. It didn't show anything, and his next solution was to cut me open and take a look. And that made no logical sense. And I had an epiphany. I had all these positive experiences with chiropractic. Chiropractic was so transformational in my athletic performance, and I wasn't getting sick. I was thriving, and it just hit me like a flash of lightning that I was born to be a chiropractor. And so I never looked back. That's how I started, or went down the chiropractic path. However, I went to Los Angeles College of Chiropractic at a time when subluxation was laughed at. amongst my peers on the campus, and my chiropractic philosophy class was actually chiropractic history, and we were given a 34th principle, which was "May the force be with you." You know, the 33 principles were laughed at, they were scoffed at. Subluxation, you know, in our diagnostics classes was a joking term that people use when saying what it may be, and none of it was serious. So I came out of school unable to even say subluxation, and I was unable to even give care plans beyond 12 visits. Of course, at that time I called them treatment plans, right? I was obviously confused, and all I had to go off of was bumper sticker philosophy and no substance. So I fortunately made it to Parker seminar, and Jim Sigafus was speaking, and I heard him going off, and I wasn't sure what he was saying because he was talking so quickly, but he was excited and energetic. It made me want to dive deeper into the philosophy. I'd never seen a green book at that point. So I started to explore and understand what this thing really was. And I learned chiropractic through seminar circuits. And that's not to put Mile High down at all, right? Mile High is necessary, but let's just for a moment think about what it really means. It means that we have a profession that is so confused and academically so lost that people go to chiropractic colleges without ever learning chiropractic, and we're relegated oftentimes to learning chiropractic in hotels. And again, that's not a knock on Mile High. It's to highlight that how important Mile High is at this juncture in our profession and the significance of that. And a lot of people just don't understand that we are on the brink of extinction, and that we only have a few chiropractic colleges that actually teach chiropractic, and we are dominated by a cartel bent on marginalizing us, not secretly, but very publicly, using a government structure to orchestrate this complete monopoly.
Right.
And that has to end.
Yeah, and I will say you're 1,000% right, and I will also add to it, because it's sad. Rochelle and I guide people in practice, and even when we're teaching network and teaching analysis, there's such a gap between understanding chiropractic foundation principles, philosophy, science, art, that people went to certain schools that they just have none of that. And that kind of comes in because you're like, wow, the gap is so big. And so that I'm sure that happens even in coaching programs people do. It's like, well, they don't even know how to structure a care plan, like you said, as compared to a treatment plan. That's all necessary. And it's sad because it shows that people are not getting that in school. And you know, with Mile High, the backyard is the NBCE and the FCLB. I mean, we're the state that's the battleground state of that. And the DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies, in and of itself, noticed that was a concern. And they brought up, hey, we've got to take the NBCE off as the only agency. You know, it's interesting that the regulatory agency brought that to the chiropractic board, that this is a concern. They brought it, you know, and it's in their backyard. And, you know, it's been a problem, you know, a long slow slide down with everything. So let's let people know a little bit more in on that. And that's, you're right, Mile High, that's been a movement to bring awareness to that, and the people that have awareness to be able to share that from the stage and have a resource that people don't even know that while they're getting, you know, learning about chiropractic, they can also be aware of what's going on politically. And people have no idea about what the NBC has done or what the FCLB has done. And it's some will say bordering on criminal. You could just say it's criminal. Depending on your point of view there. So first of all, let's talk about that. there's a coalition people have been talking about. Some people have heard that there's this coalition. Some people are like, what is that? Some are very involved. What is there a coalition for?
Yeah, so there is the coalition you're referring to is the Chiropractic Freedom Coalition. And it's what we're for is in the name. We are for a free marketplace where we have professional autonomy, where we are no longer under the thumb of a cartel that has created the situation and stolen chiropractic from the rightful heirs to it, right? And so for those that don't know the history of how this all happened, this happened when the ACA and the ICA were both putting forth a potential accrediting bodies to the U.S. Department of Education. I think it was in 1974.
Yep, that's exactly what it was.
Yep, and the U.S. Department of Education didn't want two bodies, so they said, "Okay, you guys got to figure this out." They had a binding arbitration. They were in talks to put forth one body, and the ACA put forth their organization, the CCE, behind the back of ICA, right? So, and that organization was accepted, and at the time, the philosophically centered schools represented something like 70%.
Right, exactly. People would be shocked. People would be shocked because, example, NYCC was one of the, straightest of the straights. Parker, TCC was. You could go down the list, and people don't even realize. But these schools that now don't even use the word subluxation, they were the straightest of the straight schools back then.
Well, even national used subluxation back then,
right?
And so
Cleveland,
they stole, they wrestled control through this process, and then they used force to coerce schools into teaching what they wanted them to teach, and they did that for a long time. There was a culture of fear that was very well known. Multiple college presidents have spoken of it. It was a disgusting process. It was not academic. It was political, and it was manipulative and coercive. And now it was a brilliant plan. We shouldn't fault them on that. They had a brilliant plan, and they out-strategized our side of the profession. They got into this, they got their accrediting body, and then from there they created the FCLB, and they pushed for monopolistic CCE only language state by state, and they did a phenomenal job. Like, kudos to them, great job. I don't know exactly who did it, but they did a great job. And what that did was it created a monopoly. We can no longer get a second accrediting body, which, by the way, is not an uncommon thing. There's other professions that have second accrediting bodies. There's no problem with that.
Right.
The problem is with the current monopolistic language in the state statutes or in the regulations or both. To make matters worse, they then brought in the NBCE, which is the third part of their cartel, which then they got the NBCE to be named specifically in state statutes, state regulations. And by the way, the NBCE is a private organization, right? It's not like, who said that they should be the ones who are granting licenses, basically, like to our graduates from chiropractic colleges. And now NBCE is centralizing their Part 4, which is now not only do we have this Part 4, which, by the way, the medical profession, the osteopathic profession got rid of their equivalent of Part 4. So, the cartel is always talking about being wanting to be at the same standard of other healthcare professions. Well, guess what? They're behind the times. They're antiquated right now, and they're pushing for this centralization and spending $20 million on this new facility in Greeley, Colorado, forcing students to incur more costs. And for what? The school's already certified that these students are competent. This is an unnecessary, redundant, antiquated test, and that needs to go away.
I told you when that NBCE and FCLB is in Greeley, and when I heard that they were making students fly, people may not know this, and no offense to anybody who lives in Greeley or practices in Greeley, one of the characteristics of Greeley is that it smells like manure. It very frequently smells like manure when you go there because there's a lot of farming and nothing against farmers. But as you approach, you're like, oh, I'm getting to Greeley because you can smell it. And so as soon as I heard that the NBC and FCLB were there, I was like, well, that kind of fits because it smells like a certain kind of, you
Are
know.
you suggesting that the smell is coming from the NBCE?
or just if the smell fits, say if the shoe fits, the
Got it.
smell fits what's going on, right?
Got it.
So it fits what's going on. So understand, let me understand, make sure I play this back right to you and for our listeners. So the dental and medical boards, I believe, and may have been others, took away their competency tests because they said, and I think they did it after 2020, that we don't really need to do this. They've gotten a diploma, it's accreditation, it's just burdensome on the students, so we're going to get rid of it. Meanwhile, the chiropractic boards, which have always done, keep up with the Joneses, right? So we want to keep up with the other professions, and we'll make part 4, so we're keeping up with them. Now they're not getting rid of it like the other professions had. They're making it more difficult by saying you have to fly to an area that smells and get and pay for a flight, pay for hotel. It's not even near an airport, so it makes it extremely difficult for students. And I think there's money to be made. I think that there's a cost. It's not a free exam, right?
No. It's compared to the other professions. It's also one of the highest for other exams. And so yes, Danny, the medical profession, the osteopathic profession, both got rid of their Part 4 during COVID, and they decided not to go back to it because they also see it as redundant, right? Let's just look at this from a logical perspective. The CCE is accrediting chiropractic colleges, saying that they are producing competent chiropractors, right? The schools have all their testing systems, which the CCE approves and reviews, and students, in order to go through clinic, have to go through all the practical exams, right, at the college level. And here's the thing: when these conversations are brought to the NBCE, they just ignore it. College, there's letters out from college president, going to the NBCE, and it's being ignored, right? And not only is the test expensive, but there's a $20 million price tag on that new testing facility. Who do you think's paying for it? Where's that money coming from? I mean, where's all their money?
Well, I know it's not doctors.
Yeah. All we're asking for is to have a system that isn't raising costs. In fact, with this new big beautiful bill, there's going to be some major changes to how student loans are acquired and how colleges are able to operate. We shouldn't be increasing costs at this time. We should be looking at ways to cut costs.
And this is going to be something that people are going to have the opportunity to learn more about when they're at Mile High, right? There's going to be a gathering of some kind there, so people can and several of the speakers will be able to share about this, so people are more in the inside loop than the outside.
Absolutely. So this is a time where everyone has a role, right? Time, resources, money, whatever it is, talents. Everyone has a role. The coalition has teams. There's a strong organizational structure for it. So if someone wants to help and participate, Mile High is the place to be, because there's going to be an in-person meeting. There's going to be a lot of discussions. There's going to be fundraising. There's going to be lots going on at Mile High. And so that's the place to be to really be involved in this movement.
Yeah. And I want people to do that. I want people to know that they can be part of this. And they're also hear about it at Mile High, because again, Mile High, like when I first put on the event, I said, I want people to have a stage that they can hear about what's going on in the profession and be able to be aware, because I wasn't aware of stuff. People are taking care of people in their practice, take care of their families, and they may not be aware of what's going on, but they have to have a place that they can find out information and be connected to others and say, hey, I do want to be a steward of this, and this is how can I pitch in? And some people can do it by time or talent or finances, right? So time, talent, or treasure. But whatever way, you'll have a way to be part of that when you're at Mile High and hear what's going on. So I highly recommend. I mean, this is going to be about the coalition, the NBCE, the FCLB, and there's also an accrediting agency. Can you share briefly about that?
Yeah, the IACE International Association. Let's see, what does it stand for, Danny?
International Association of Chiropractic Education.
That's right. I always call it IACE. So IACE has been in operation for, I think, 2 decades now. It's been doing international accrediting, and so the coalition is actively working to get the IACE recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, and here's the thing: like, who wouldn't be for academic freedom, right? Who is for monopolies in this country? All these other healthcare professions, many of them have other testing processes. They have other accreditor options. Why do we need to limit thought and instead of creating an environment where academic pursuit is the goal and not the stifling of ideas? And so, listen, they wrestled control politically years ago. We're not looking to get rid of them, right? They can do whatever they want as long as they don't infringe on the core values of this profession, and that's drugs and surgery, right? It's always when they really push the boundaries that they end up hurting themselves. They've done so in Montana recently, and that's the other thing. If you're listening to this right now and you're not aware that Montana almost got drug rights, a month ago or 2 months ago, and it was barely beaten down, thanks to chiropractors showing up in the state in a big way and in other places. If you're not aware of that, it means that you're going to be really surprised when you find your profession lost one day, and you're going to wonder why you didn't know. And the only reason you didn't know is because, unfortunately, you didn't care enough to know or get connected to the right people who do know, so that you can know and so that you can act and do something about it. And so, the coalition stands for 3 things. We stand for a free market. So that means having a second accrediting body option for chiropractic colleges. That also means that we need the removal of CCE only and NBC only language. So we're not for monopolies. If you are for that, you're for a monopoly. And we're for a drugless profession. So those are our 3 objectives. And you need to ask yourself and ask other leaders, if you're not for that, then you're against it. And this is the line. This is the line now. You're either for this or you're for the cartel. And we need to ask our leadership too, then go back and ask, well, how come you're not a part of the coalition? Because the really cool thing about the coalition is this is not an organization, this is a movement. It's leaders from all facets of the profession, all technique systems, all different organizations, different practice styles, all these different things, but we value the same things and we have the same objectives. There's really no reason not to be for the coalition unless you're for the cartel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's the thing. People don't necessarily realize how deep this goes and how it's all intertwined. and there's the number of organizations that are funding this are immense. And there are organizations that are shifting it, like the IFCO, right? Like the Florida Chiropractic Society. Did I say that right? The Florida Chiropractic Society, right? And other organizations that are there to say, no, we are in agreement that this is not chiropractic, and we're going to shift this. It's interesting. We just had as we know, July 4th, the day of celebrating freedom. Similarly, in the Declaration of Independence, those signers, right, the 56 signers that signed their name to this, that said, we either we're gonna either die, hang together, right? Or we're going to move forward together, right? And all agreed that we're going to do this. They had a lot to lose, right? They were certainly, if this did not fly, they would all be, killed, right? And they all were very wealthy people, but they said, this is just not the right thing. We're going to stand up for something and go a certain direction. And there are people that realize that there's, evil being done here, and that say, you know what, our organization, the New Mexico Association, right, there's different ones that said, we're going to draw a line in the sand. My mom, when she went to chiropractic school, Steve, she went to an interview, right? They had an interview to go. She didn't know much. Her son had gotten better by chiropractic care, and she just said, well, I want to do this, so I'm going to go to chiropractic school. I didn't really know anything about it. And so at the interview, she said, well, I want to become a doctor of chiropractic medicine. She didn't know that there wasn't such a thing, and it was NYCC. And the interviewer at NYCC said to her, well, there's no such thing as chiropractic medicine. Like, he corrected her. At NYCC, think of how far, we've gone, right? And so, but that slow slide, but there's people that say, this is the line in the sand, and we're not doing this anymore, and it's time to take our profession back. And Mile High is the platform, to be that this is, of all the programs that are going on in chiropractic, that this is what we stand for, and this is for the people that are facing that direction. And while you're there, we've kind of gone down the political rabbit hole, and I want you to learn more about that at Mile High. But I also do want to touch on something else, Steve, that's important, which is usually the people that have these values that we're discussing and that go to Mile High and listen to the podcast. Usually, they don't pay attention to the politics because they're, as people say, in the trenches. Because they're taking care of people. I don't like the in the trenches term, but they're taking care of people, and they're focusing on adjusting subluxation and running their practice, and they don't see all this. But they're also chasing new patients, right? They're chasing new patients because the chiropractic profession has not really said what its identity is, and people don't know what chiropractic is and why they all need to go, other than if they're in pain. So they end up chasing new patients, rather than attracting them, because we have the most powerful healing art on the planet. And people, we couldn't possibly take care of everybody if we wanted to, if we had the opportunity to, we couldn't. So they don't necessarily promote themselves in such a way that they create demand for what they do. They really, they run after people, which then pushes them away, rather than attracting them, and having them come to it. And that was actually the idea for Mile High, to have a center of the country where people get attracted to. So I know you, and we use Waitlist Workshop for our practice. You focus on people learning about chiropractic in such a way that they're attracted to it. Can you share a little bit about that for people? Because I want them to learn about that when they're at Mile High from you as well.
Yeah, well, the model you just described sounds an awful lot like a pathogenic model, right? It sounds very outside in, right? Let's not solve the cause. What's the cause? You mentioned that we would be, if people understood what chiropractic was, there would be such a demand that we couldn't even fill it. Yet we don't go to the cause and try to correct that, right? The cause is what we've been describing. That's part of it, right? A confused public and a profession that's lost and giving out mixed messages. Another cause is, this concept of meeting the public where they're at. It's something that I think we really need to look at, because the concept of meeting the public where they're at, there's elements, yes, I agree with, but we don't have to meet them where they're at by marketing to where they're at.
Right.
And that's the
Right.
difference. We don't have to meet their expectations of who we are. Instead, we can shift beliefs and meet them where we used to always meet them before, which was in dire straits. We were used to help the sickest of the sick, the most subluxated people on the planet. And instead, and it's a long story, but it's all part of our enslavement. We gave, our leadership took the silver for third-party reimbursement during the Mercedes 80s. We got shackled in the 90s with HMOs, and chiropractors were enslaved, right? And we lost our way. We used to help the sickest of the sick. And that's not, neck pain, back pain care. Years ago, I used to share from the stage, I'd talk about this, and I'd look up some random offices local. I'd look up subluxation, chiropractor, the city, wherever I was. And who we say we are, who we claim we are, does not match what we put on our websites, on our office walls, and our brochures, and all these different things. So I got really frustrated with that years ago. I got frustrated with the fact that the majority of people coming into my practice were all neck pain, back pain people. And if we're really, really honest with ourselves and we look at even our best colleges, the reality is, what are most of those people coming into the clinic for? They're probably musculoskeletal complaints, right? And so I wanted to shift that. I believe there's a solution to every problem. And so, I'm not the first to do workshops, clearly. But I knew, based upon, conversation, I heard this from Reggie Gold one time. He said, someone asked him, if you were in a elevator with someone and you only had 60 seconds to explain chiropractic, what would you say? And he said, I would use that 60 seconds to convince them on why they should come to my patient spinal care class, right? And because we're in the business of not necessarily shifting belief systems, because the reality is the majority of the public already believes what we believe. We're really in the business of reminding them, reawakening them from the slumber, from the outside in slime and grudge that has been stuck to them. And so we have to meet them where we're at in terms of their biggest challenges. Because that's what makes us relevant. And when we're relevant, we're valued. And when we're valued, we're protected and we're sought after. And unfortunately, what our profession has done over the last 10 years on social media, it's been a race to the bottom with these commodity, the system of designed to get the lowest exam, like how low can we go on these different exam offers? And no wonder people are, look at us at a certain way, like we're a commodity. And so what workshops really do, if done properly, they establish us as the specialists that we are. They attract people with big needs, which causes people to see us as specialists when we speak on the biggest topics in their lives, and we give them logical and emotional certainty that we have one piece of the puzzle to help transform their lives. And it's a simple equation. And unfortunately, the majority of chiropractors who say we need to meet the public where they're at, they're talking about neck pain, back pain. It's because they don't know there's a different way. Right. So that's it, Danny. We have to increase demand, but we can't fully increase demand until we are free. And while if chiropractors would focus on both, let's create freedom for the next generation. Let's be stewards. Let's do even just a little bit compared to what our founders did, who went to jail. Over 700 chiropractors went to jail, so you and I could even be talking right now. If we take that seriously, then the rewards are going to be plentiful, right?
Well, I'll tell you something. This what you just said brought up something that it's getting to the heart of the problem, right? So part of why this whole cycle is lack. Okay? So people think that we cannot survive from the value of chiropractic. So we'll add more things to the practice of chiropractic because we have to get value from other health healing arts, other professions. And we also get value, like chiropractic's not valuable enough so that we have to up our testing and make us look legitimate and all of those things. It's all things in lack. And then there's not enough money. And so we got to get insurance. So there's not enough. Don't make these big outrageous things. Let's just take care of them for back pain or neck pain or just the small things, or at least we get paid for that. Which is all this lack consciousness, right? And so we don't actually put out what it is, the value of what we do, the magnificent, the impact. I had a political meeting with someone in the state of Colorado. This was years ago, and he just wanted to sit and talk with me because he was not liking the noise we were making, right? And so we sat down. I went to have dinner with this gentleman, and he said to me, "You're gonna fall over, Steve. Glad you're sitting." He said to me that, look, the only future our graduates have is to get prescription rights for muscle relaxers. If we don't do that, our graduates have no future. And he said, look, the natural progression of chiropractic is muscle relaxers. I mean, this is like exactly the words that the person said. And at that point, I just like blew up and argued with the guy. And then he said, well, what do you think? Do you think like you want to set out to change the public perception of what chiropractic is? I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I don't want the public perception to be what it is currently, and that's why you have to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, this is what chiropractic is. Otherwise, you're going to let this lack consciousness pervasive, expand into more insurance rights, other healing arts, because what we do is not of significance or value enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you just described, how can anyone who knows what we know not be a steward at this point, right? I have to believe, because I believe that the majority of chiropractors are good people. I have to believe that it's their own limiting beliefs that stop it from it's not lack of morality, right? It's not believing that they can make a difference, perhaps.
Right.
But that's the only way it ever happens, right? Is by people coming together to make a difference. And we have to again, it's not about stopping the other side. We're past that. We don't have to fight them unless they start to really impact our core values. And again, that boundary is drugs and surgery, right? We can coexist. They can present their back pain, neck pain model. However, when they try to limit us, there's no way we're going to go away. We can't. Lives are at stake. Right. And so I encourage those who want to lead their community, their profession, to get connected with the coalition. And you'll be shown a path on how you can lead and where you can lead. There's multiple teams. Wherever your talents are, there's a team for you to join and to put your talents to use.
Well, and I'm so glad that you'll be at Mile High and the other people that are involved with the coalition will be there, so it can be a platform while people are having fun, while they're learning, while they're being with other chiropractors, because chiropractors do better in community. They thrive in community and connection. It's our nature. And that while you're enjoying that, you'll actually have learn about what's going on and have that platform for that, right? So that you can be more pulled in to be a steward in whatever way you can contribute and make a difference and change, and further shift the profession from the direction and trajectory it has been. It has to change. It can't go in the continued trajectory it has been. And by the way, if people want to, in addition, connect with Steve, and correct me if I'm wrong, waitlistworkshops.com, is that correct?
Yeah, waitlistworkshops.com, Facebook, Instagram. I'm highly responsive on social media, so send me a message. Let's connect.
And again, see, I recommend people, organizations, systems that I know that they are doing things for the profession, right? That's who, that are actually not only helping you have value to reach more patients in your office, but also are doing things to give back to the profession. And Dr. Steve is absolutely one of those. And I also want to say, appreciate all that you do for Sherman College. I don't know if people realize that and all you do for the IFSO. We didn't even talk about the IFSO, so we'll have to save that for Mile High. So thank you so much, Steve. Is there any last thing you want to say for our audience here today?
No, just I'm excited to see you at Mile High. Get connected with the coalition. Let's grow this movement, and let's reclaim our rightful place as chiropractors to bring this necessary service to humanity.
I do want to ask this though, Steve, to add to it. Do you have a favorite game? If you go to a casino, you go to Las Vegas, do you have a favorite game?
I'm not a big gambler, but if I were to play, it would probably be. I hate to say this, but I do like slot machines. Blackjack's always fun, but yeah, I'd probably go with like some sort of like Wheel of Fortune slot machine or something like
Simple
that.
like that. Well, because that's a theme. That's a theme this year. It's Ocean's
Nice.
13, so it's going to be a casino environment.
I
So
would say don't gamble with our future and get to Mile High.
there you go. Exactly. Exactly. So keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic. See you on higher ground at Mile High 13. Don't let the 13 scare you. Rise up to milehigh.com. You'll get to see Dr. Steve Tullius there and so many other great people. And look forward to seeing you in September. It's a great time to be in Colorado. And again, hit subscribe on the Mile High podcast. Thank you again, Dr. Steve, for all your contributions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doc.